All right, Dan, welcome to Mueller Time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Can you
Sorry for
tell?
being in my weekend outfit. I'm doing some work in the yard.
Yeah, I was thinking before we started. There's really nothing more LA than doing a Skype interview with somebody who lives 7 minutes away, which is my idea.
Stay off the roads. Yeah, by all means.
Yeah, how's your Saturday going?
Terrific, terrific. I can't complain. We're in the holiday break. Actually, we're having a bit of a news blackout. I'd say I'm staying away from the newspaper and the TV for a little while. I need a reset before the new year.
Yeah, right before I called you on Skype, unfortunately I'm on a bunch of email lists for this administration, and unfortunately I use my own email. Anyway, I got an email about their crowdfunding the wall, and I just
Oh boy.
yeah, you just kind of shake your head a little bit.
Something's going on out there for sure.
So yeah, I was wondering if you could just tell us about Unfit, the movie you're making, and what's going on with that.
Yeah, hashtag unfit. Yeah, well, we're doing a Kickstarter campaign to fund the movie. Uh, Listen, everybody, there's a lot of us out there, obviously, millions and millions, maybe 60 million, I don't know, um, who who see this guy for what he is. I mean, this is a dangerous moment. It's a perilous moment in American history and honestly in world history. And that's sort of another layer that the film aspires to get into. But the uh, there's something in the water. I mean, there is a rise of authoritarianism going on around the globe that's very alarming. And I think there have been times in history when that happens in other countries for other reasons. But there's really something going on around the globe. And the fact that it would take hold here as well, I think is what's most alarming. And I think they'll be writing books about the 2016 election for decades and decades to come. And it would be easy to write it off as fluky about a particular candidate who struck a resonant chord and a particularly flawed candidate on the other side. But what the film aspires to do is to really look at the psychology of Donald Trump himself and why so many people are so concerned, and to look at the psychology of the electorate that put him in office, because ultimately that's of greater concern. What is going on right now that would lead so many people, that it's so riled the culture that people would turn to essentially a strong man of dubious distinction, no background in public service, peddling um, demagogical, easy solutions that
Right.
honestly anyone with critical thinking can see are not going to come to pass. They're certainly not going to benefit America. But there's no question he's resonating with millions and millions of people, and his supporters are getting more and more dug in, and the country is getting more and more torn apart.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I had that on my. I mean, I don't usually make huge lists of questions, but one I did have, which I'm glad you
Sure.
brought it up, was does your movie cover not just him, but why people are attracted to him?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it would be incomplete without talking about that. I think that there's a lot of controversy around this topic, which I always want to make sure to get out in the beginning, which is that there's some history to this, which is 1964 election, which was another historic important election. Barry Goldwater was really bringing a radically different message for that time. And a lot of people believed that Goldwater was a madman, and there was a lot of ginned up, hysteria about that he was going to, take us to war and use the bomb, and it was, and that he wasn't a rational thinker.
Mm.
And there was a famous article, which is now, anyway, this chapter with Barry Goldwater being alleged to be a crazy man in the
Mm.
press really led to a rule in the psychiatric and psychological communities, both the APA, the American Psychiatric Association, and the Psychological Association that mirrors that, both have analogous rules about not politicizing diagnoses. And it's literally called the Goldwater Rule in the American Psychiatric Association's sort of manual. And the story about how that came down was really quite interesting. The film will certainly go into this, which is that in this kind of, moment of hysteria about Barry Goldwater, a magazine, I believe it was called Fact Magazine, sent around a questionnaire to something like 1,800 mental health professionals, asking them if they believed that Barry Goldwater was of sound mind or not. And very few responded, but the ones who responded were the ones who were concerned and who had reasons, whatever, that they saw some instability there, that they were frightened. I don't know what their reasoning was, but I believe the methodology was that they said that a non-response, it was equated to believing the thesis. So they put out a thesis and they said, respond if you disagree or something like that. I don't remember exactly how it worked, but it was not a scientific survey in any way. And it yielded a very incorrect result, but it was clearly the agenda of the article to yield that result. So they said, only a small fraction responded, and the respondents only disagreed with this. And anyway, they came up with this positioning that Barry Goldwater was unsafe. And I think that the Goldwater Rule that followed that. Now, Barry Goldwater sued this magazine, Fact Magazine, and had a successful suit that ultimately put them out of business. Won a large judgment in excess of their value. And the Goldwater Rule that came out of that case and that story, I think, is a very important and well-intentioned rule. The effort to keep mental health from becoming politicized, I think, is a worthy goal.
Sure.
And the problem with it is that, well, there's a few problems with it. The problem with it is that it relegates the discussion of mental emotional stability to those who are, by definition, not qualified. And that's really what's happened. So all of the mental health professionals have really been under effectively a gag order. And this rule, importantly, was reaffirmed by the APA in March of 2017, 2 months after Trump took office, because there was a lot of concern that there were going to be a lot of people writing and talking about Trump's potential mental instability and his incapacities. So they really asserted their position and asked all of their members to not speak to the media. And what this did, because the public obviously has seen a lot of very curious behavior that reads immediately to a lot of people as not so stable.
Yeah.
Calling yourself a very stable genius is not very stable or very genius. But it led to a lot of discussion on cable news and elsewhere about Trump's mental state, and specifically absent from that conversation were any mental health experts. There's really very few who have been willing to break with their association and speak out publicly. And the position of those who have, I mean, these are some doctors who we're collaborating with, position of those who have is that there is another ethical standard that applies to mental health experts, which says that they have a duty to warn the public of any potential or imminent dangers.
Right.
So what these mental health professionals are talking about, and what the film will expand upon, is the desire to balance the well-intentioned rule to keep mental health from being politicized, and the need to fulfill their responsibility as mental health professionals to warn the public of potential danger. And that really came from, experts meeting with, you meet with a client, and it was always believed that you should, keep your mouth shut, that was a kind of privileged conversation. Well, it's believed to be a privileged conversation unless that mental health professional has concern for public safety.
Right.
And they do have concern for public safety. It's considered their ethical obligation to warn. And so we are working with a group of doctors who have broken with the trade association and made sure to warn the public. Now, there is a technical difference, though. They are saying some of them are saying that they understand the spirit of non-politicization, but in the letter of it, what the Goldwater rule really tries to do is keep doctors from diagnosing people who they have not met with or have a professional relationship with.
Right.
If they had a professional relationship with them, it would be completely unethical to publicly speak about their observations.
Sure.
So there's another sort of cyclical logic to it, which is anyone who has that relationship would not be allowed to speak to publicly about their patient. So what they're doing is not diagnosing at all. Diagnosis is something that should be done with a clinician in a room and spending time and really understanding that patient, and then working with them to develop a treatment plan. There's no effort, there's no interest in diagnosing Trump among these physicians. There's only an interest in the other side,
Right.
which is to fulfill their duty to warn the public about the very real dangers that they see.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the Goldwater rule in a nutshell, and the controversial aspect of what the film will get into.
Do they? Yeah. I mean, it's funny. When I was thinking about some things I wanted to talk about with you, the comic aspect of this, because I'm a comedian. I mean, the fact that it's comical to me that it's the way things appear to be set up is that he doesn't have to follow any rules, and then these esteemed professionals have to follow, to me, what's an absurd rule in this case.
Yeah. I mean, no kidding. There's a really there's an idea that will come out in the film, which is about the concept of malignant normality, is what they call it, which is really about the erosion of norms. The erosion of norms, on the one hand, I get really annoyed. I hear people on cable television saying, like, this is not normal. Well, since when did normal become an important standard?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that things should be defended on their variation from normal. On the other hand, a lot of those norms have real importance and evolve for very good reasons. And I think that the dynamic that we're in right now as a public is that so much has come out that is so far, it has broken so many norms, so far afield of normal, that it's becoming hard to see the forest for the trees. It's becoming hard to see the pathological behavior in the scheme, in the whole scheme, because there's just so much out there that has been normalized by political, the nature of politics, which is that your supporters look to, throw their support, wrap their arm around concepts, ideas, comments, no matter how outrageous they are at the moment, for fear of losing political clout, right? For losing political advantage. So the amount of obviously dangerous, unthoughtful, unvaluable American processes, policies, I mean, ill-considered ideas. Like, yeah, you can say that you'd like to, there's an argument about whether troops should stay in or out of Syria or Afghanistan. Those are important conversations to have. But doing it without a deliberative process, doing it without any full, consideration, doing it without commentary from experts or without fully understanding the impact of what you're doing, there is no defense for it. Trump has been very aware. I should say that I think that you could look at everything that Trump is doing. You could say that this guy must be a genius for how he is undermining everything. I learned a long time ago, because I had the privilege of working with some people who I think are really, really genius and brilliant, and other people sometimes who are believed to be genius and brilliant. And one of the distinctions that I just personally make is I don't use that term genius when someone is just a kind of intuitive or instinctual player. Like that's a term to me that's reserved for people who understand what they're doing, they understand why what they're doing works, and they understand the mechanics, and they're driven to a specific result. Not just intuitive players who kind of know what to do in an emergency, or who have, a sense of what's going to work. Trump is a totally intuitive player. I think he is marketing, he's a it's none of it is by design, none of it is by plan. And I think that where he has succeeded is really striking this nerve of undermining what he would call elitists and elitism, but what he's really, and an anti-intellectual strain, but it's really undermining the sense that process and authority and expertise are valuable to any decision.
Mm.
All these decisions are made by intuition.
Mm.
And I think that there's a portion of the public that's really responding very well to that because they have the same gut level first instinct too. But, where are we? Are we, was it in 6th grade or 7th grade when we learned that not every first gut instinct is a right read, and that you need to really have an informed position before you make important stances.
Yeah, it's sort of strange. I mean, every one of those people, let's say his supporters, I I would just like to know, like, if you acted like Trump in your day-to-day life, in one day, if you acted like that, effectively your life would probably be over. Your wife would leave you, your job, yet they think it's okay for him to do. It's fascinating.
There's no psychological test, nor should there be,
Yeah.
to becoming president. That would just be a mess. Some people proposed that in the wake of the 2016 election. That's just insane. There's tremendous, psychiatric screening for people at all kinds of high levels of government. But for that top job, we just, we give it out. We give it out because we believe that, when a couple 100 million people assess after a year or 2-year long election, that it's probably a reliable result.
Obviously, that was a mistake. Maybe we should have something.
Usually it has been, but the people who launched the nuclear codes, I mean, there's rigorous psychiatric screening before you can get on those facilities. Even the people who take out the trash in a nuclear facility are screened really rigorously. But the guy who actually says whether we fire him or not, that just happens. And again, back to the lack of expertise in the public discussion, it just happens, and it happens at the moment without any meaningful commentary from people who are in a position to understand the psychology of the man and how he's making decisions.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm just curious, since the president, let's say every president has to get a physical and release that, do you think there should be a mental health exam or no?
I think, look, I mean, we found out with the physical and the tax returns and all kinds of things that are normal, as we've talked about, that they are just norms, and they're not required. I think I would be very concerned about an actual psychological test.
Yeah.
The ability to undermine that, the ability to have one person, or even if it was a panel of people should not be able to undermine an election in which hundreds of millions of people voted.
Russians.
But I do think there's a lot of value to a lot of new transparency that in the wake of this presidency that should be required by law. Certainly tax returns. Maybe there should be some kind of, I think of physical, there's nothing wrong with physical, with a medical physical test being made public, and there probably could be some kind of very clinical, objective psychiatric test that could be part of that, just to screen out some really crazy things. If those would come during the run-up to an election, not afterwards, that could be valuable.
And to be fair, to your point, it's not like any of this was a secret. This guy has been very upfront from 50 years ago about who he is. There's no secret here.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, back to this idea of where I think the important things that the film ultimately has to answer is the why of it. is Trump is he's the symptom. He's not the disease. There's something out there that is leaving millions and millions of people susceptible to his influence, and then there are millions and millions of people on the other side, more people, in fact, who just see it for what it is and see it very clearly. And I think that's the important thing for us to wrestle with in terms of who we are. If you look at this, what we started with, we talked about the rise of authoritarianism around the globe. If you look at other countries, periods, Germany in the 20s and 30s and the run up to World War II, usually this phenomenon of authoritarianism and strong men who are going to save us from everything that's going on. In historical examples, this really is born out of periods of great strife. And sustained strife. Germany in the wake of World War One. European unemployment was maybe 50%. And Germany was the worst of it. It was hard to get food, and rubble in the streets and things like that. A lot of really tough times for a long time before authoritarianism seemed like a good solution. Question about how the world's wired at this particular moment is, why are people, feeling under such assault at the moment? Because if you look at where we're actually at, there are good times and bad times, and some people, different sectors of the economy are in decline and others are rising. But on total, disease is pretty well in check. People are pretty well fed in America, very low unemployment. Wage discrepancy continues to be a problem, but there's not tremendous economic or civil unrest in America, but there is a tremendous feeling of conflict and uncertainty. And we can look at what the two kind of most popular bogeymen of the moment are really social media and the way that is polarizing the public and tearing at the fabric of society. Just slipped my mind. We'll double back in a second.
There's
But anyway,
so
you look at the usual fact. Oh, globalization.
Okay.
Those are pointed to again and again, and I think it's really true. But I think there still may be another piece that's missing, because you look, we do increasingly live in this almost virtual world where the media that we consume is informing how we feel. Back in the, if you watch too much local news, you just feel like there's a murder or somebody breaking in the house every second.
A helicopter chase.
Helicopter chases are going on. My God. Because those are the stimuli, those are the inputs, and that forms your opinion of the world. And if your opinion of the world is being formed by surfing from, one conspiracy website to the next, or you're going to feel under threat, even if you're living in living in a Tony suburb and eating well and a lot of safety and security and no real threat from immigration or other things.
Yeah.
So. But I think that the strong man is appealing to a lot of people, and I'm definitely very interested. I think rather than having Facebook fights with friends and family, about Trump and how could you do this and how could you Trump tards and you're snowflakes or whatever.
Yeah.
I think the more important thing is for us to try to get our heads around how this phenomenon works. Because this guy is going down the line, following the authoritarian playbook, and I say that he's doing it as an unconscious player. I don't think he's aware or thinking about why he's doing it. But authoritarians, they push the limits of power. That's the first thing. And by pushing the limits of power, you start to propose outrageous things. And there is a psychological phenomenon where if you propose the outrageous thing, even though that's probably not going to happen, you've successfully moved the center of the debate. And Trump does this over and over again. So now we're talking about how much wall, right?
Yeah.
Maybe he won't get the wall, but maybe he'll get a lot of wall. Or we're talking about, beefing up border security. And maybe that some of that was necessary, but some of that is certainly overplayed. So he's doing authoritarian playbook, right? Push the center by proposing outrageous things, hollow out bureaucracies, right? He's doing that all over the place. Again, it's because bureaucracies are a check on power.
Right.
So the more we can get rid of competent people in all the different cabinet posts and all the different departments, the easier it is for him to get done what he wants to do and undermine the free press. If people are walking around and they don't trust the press, they don't trust their information sources anymore, then anything they're saying about you, about Trump,
Mm-hmm.
You don't know if you can trust it or not.
Right.
And he has certainly been successful in that. So it puts us in a perilous moment, and that's why I think the film is really important to do. It is, I said, on Kickstarter, and we need people to go to Kickstarter and search for hashtag Unfit. The campaign is, we're on a 30-day campaign. We've got about 20 days or something left, and we're a good chunk of the way funded, but we really needed to catch fire in order to get it done. I can't believe that there aren't, millions of people out there who are willing to give a buck. Go on, give a buck, give $5.
Yeah.
You don't have to, you can get a tote bag or not get a tote bag. I don't care. But it's important that we get the film made and we put some real valuable discussion about what mental health is and isn't and what the real professionals see going on today so that people have the language for talking about this instead of just bickering back and forth. Trump is crazy. He's not crazy. Crazy like a fox. Maybe, he's getting stuff done. I'll take a crazy man. If he breaks up the, power base in Washington, we wanted somebody who'd blow things up. He's blowing it up. The normal is that. Like, we need to put some meat on the bone in terms of that discussion. And I think a lot of people, they look at this campaign and they say, oh, well, Trump, everybody knows he's crazy. Why do we have to fund it? Well, they know, they intuitively know he's crazy, but they don't really have the language for talking about. They don't have the arguments to make, and they don't really have a historical context to put it into and talk about why it's potentially so dangerous. I liken it to the inconvenient truth. Everybody knew about climate change at the time. I mean, climate change deniers weren't even so big at the time. Most people agreed. But everybody knew about it. Mm-hmm. But something about a thoughtful, in-depth way of putting it all together for people really moved the needle in terms of that debate. And that's really what we need right now. We need people to stop going like Trump is crazy and start saying Trump may be crazy.
Right.
It could be that the guy sitting at the top of all of this infrastructure is really not playing with the full deck. And I said crazy at one point, in the Kickstarter script, we had written crazy, and we decided we can't say crazy. First of all, crazy, it's silly. It's not the right way for talking about mental health. But my editor said, I got serious mental health issues, and I don't fair to crazy people to call him crazy. Plenty of people are crazy. This guy is dangerous. Dangerous is different. We've all got mental health issues. That's not something to laugh about. Everybody's dealing with their own psychology on some level. But the list of potential pathologies that are on display here is frightening. And the film will go into them as best we can.
Right. I mean, does everyone in the professionals you interviewed, were they all pretty much have a consensus, or was there any difference in opinion that you found interesting?
Well, first of all, I want to say that the people who we talked to for the Kickstarter reel, those are not the interviews for the film. Okay. The film, we're still in the fundraising thing. The film is going to be top notch. It's going to look beautiful. The reel was made out of Skype interviews and discussions. Obviously, we went to people who had written about and who had have already commented publicly about their concerns about Trump's mental health. But there is no notable movement of mental health professionals who are dissenting from this point of view. I'm not going to say that there's no one. Of course, I'm sure there's one. But if you really if you get out and start digging, you're not going to find a groundswell of mental health professionals who are saying that these guys are wrong. They might be saying it's inappropriate to comment, but there's nobody out there who's making a counter argument. I don't think there's one to be made. It's like, Trump's business acumen. There's plenty of people who believe that he's a great businessman, but there is a dearth of people who will tell you that they made their money because of Donald Trump.
Right.
No, all the people who collaborated, worked with him, whether they were investors or craftspeople who did the work, contractors, they all lost their shirts.
Yeah.
People who are really successful in business usually have flanks of people out there who are grateful to them because of the money they made together. Never happened.
And to your point, another thing that you've never seen, which I'm surprised they never report more on this, which is to the point of your film, he has no friends. A completely abnormal way of life. There's people who say, but that's not a friend.
Yeah.
And that's not normal.
Yeah. I mean, look, in the litany of pathologies that people are, that mental health professionals have cited, ADHD, not a big deal. Potential cognitive decline, maybe something that came with age, maybe it used to be sharper. Also concerning, not a big deal. Some delusional disorder, that's starting to be concerning. But again, not the biggest deal. Hypomania, paranoid personality disorder has been cited. Present hedonism, which is the inability to restrain themselves from pleasure seeking in the moment. Antisocial personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder. Any one of those or even two of those may not be alarming. People have them. It's not they're not disqualifying, but all of them together is a mess.
Yeah.
It's a mess. And and then in the end, the big one that we sort of hold out because it's a very unusual diagnosis is called malignant narcissism. And this was really a diagnosis that was invented really to describe Hitler.
Yeah.
Malignant narcissist. It's the full panoply of disorders that work together for somebody who has such startlingly low self-esteem that they are forever needing to prove themselves, right? That's where the narcissist sort of thrives. People think, a narcissist loves themselves because they're all about themselves. But it's the opposite. A narcissist is driven to bring attention to themselves because of their low self-esteem. Donald Trump is a black hole of self-esteem.
Right.
And anybody who sees him working can see that. But you take that and you couple that with what's definitely just an acute lack of empathy towards other people, and a willingness to trounce over others, to realize even the slightest gain for himself. You have somebody who's just plain dangerous. Now, if that person weren't empowered, if that person was regular middle-class Joe, like you said earlier, he'd probably find his life deteriorating around him.
Right.
Because people wouldn't stand for it. But somehow Trump has created this mystique of how powerful, of how successful he is. Trump Tower is a great accomplishment. I'm going to say that even with all the advantages he had, it was a big deal when it happened. I grew up in New York City, and I remember when the tower opened. It was a big deal. It was a great accomplishment, and it put him on the map, and it made him very famous.
True.
And then he's done a tremendous job of parlaying that little bit of celebrity into a mystique. And Mark Burnett and NBC played no small part in burnishing that mystique. Millions and millions and millions of advertising dollars spent over a period of, 10 years or whatever he was doing The Apprentice to burnish that that image
Right.
as a ruthless but brilliant businessman. Um, Really, what you see, the real man is a very little accomplishment, but certainly is ruthless. Um, Certainly is willing to trounce over anyone or anything, even to gain slight advantage for himself. A distinct lack of empathy and compassion, and that's already manifest in policy decisions. Obviously, all the stuff at the border and children,
Yeah.
and all that's just
Yeah.
appalling. And I just don't believe, I don't believe that it would have happened with anyone else really in that position. I think that stuff comes from the top because there's so many people up and down the chain who had to have had the concern about what they were doing there and what they were using the power of government to achieve.
Yeah. And then even a normal person obviously does not work in this administration. So it's even worse because he starts attracting probably, again, I'm not a mental health professional, but I think there's a couple literal psychopaths who work right under him. And it's even worse.
I can only imagine that, look, he's charismatic. He's, years of being in the spotlight has made him very comfortable and very fluid. And there's something refreshing about that. There's no question. I mean, everyone felt it when he, all the stuffy politicians on stage and during the Republican debates back in 2016. He was a breath of fresh air. And he explained things simply. And like I said before, there's always been a strong anti-intellectual strain in America.
That's a very polite way of saying.
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel it too.
Like,
Nobody wants to be that. Nobody wants to be that. But I don't know. President isn't an entry level job,
right.
and it shouldn't be anyone's first job in public service.
Yeah.
And it certainly should be reserved for people who have who are mentally stable, and who have some wisdom.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what it comes down to in the end. And it's hard, I think, to make an argument that Trump has any whatsoever. I think there is something, when we talked about what may be going on in the culture, I do think that I think that the culture has lost something. I think that when I was growing up, there was a phrase that you heard over and over again. Kids play sports, and that's believed to be character building, right? So people would say about baseball, it'd say it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. And I heard that so many times growing up, and from so many people, and I think that I don't really hear that expression a lot anymore, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think you don't hear it a lot because I think people don't believe it anymore. I think that if life is a game, everybody understands that the point to a game is to win.
Right.
And people kind of have accepted the fact that if it wins, then it was right. And I think what Trump is actually pitching is, I'm not going to play the game right. I'm not going to play the game fairly. I'm not going to play by the rules.
Yeah.
But I'm going to win for you. And I think a lot of people are seduced by that.
Yeah.
I think that tragically, for them and for all of us at the moment, is that there's no evidence that he will win.
Yeah.
And he's not winning.
No.
Because he doesn't play the game right. And so then we've lost sort of on both fronts. We've lost morality in terms of playing the right way, and we haven't gotten results.
In terms of playing a game, I mean, it's like he's playing a game in another like arena, doing things as you yourself, of course, know. I don't know what game he's playing, but it's a private Donald game.
He's playing the me game.
Yeah.
He's playing. Yeah. It's all about me game, and anything that moves the ball forward for me is good. And I think it begins and ends there. I think that he is interested in Americans doing well only insofar as it helps him get elected. I don't think there's any evidence of a broader goal to sort of lift all boats. I think he's interested in mostly himself,
Yeah.
and by whatever metric he sees at the day, whether it's ratings when he was on The Apprentice, whether it was money when he was just real estate developing, and polls while he's in office.
On our show, we often call him the Big Lebowski, because that, to me, that's the movie personification of what he is. Remember when he's yelling at him, you never worked a day in your life, and it turns out that he's just a bum. And we found out that Trump got all his money from his dad.
Yeah.
And this, I'm sure you already know this. They said that if he invested his money in an index fund, he would be richer now.
I have no doubt about that. I mean, I think I bet if we got to look at the books, what we would see is, and here I'm speculating.
Of course.
I imagine if we got to look at the books, we'd see that he was a net loss across his real estate developing career. He made some money on The Apprentice, and he made some money with some different, he's a brand licenser. He licenses his name to go on hotels, and my guess is that the Trump organization itself is mostly licensing of the Trump name, probably a little money laundering on the side.
A little, just a bit.
Hotels are a good place to do it.
Yeah, I've read about apparently this thing with golf courses too. Apparently it's like near impossible to make money owning a golf course. And yet he's obviously infused a lot of cash into these. I mean, you don't have to be a Robert Mueller to know what's going on.
That's going to be a new expression. You don't have to be Bob Mueller to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, I think that the other thing, I think we've touched on sort of most of the important things. I think the other thing that's really interesting that is important that the film get into is, we were kind of getting to it now, but is the impact on all of us. Some very great articles by some really accomplished mental health professionals talking about what they've actually seen in their practice and what you can see along, around the country and the broader culture since Trump's election. Obviously, there's a lot of people who are upset by this, and so there's all kinds of people who are running around with a lot of free-floating anxiety and sleep disorders and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think the more important thing is the way the culture reacts to him and how the culture is moving. And there's one of these mental health professionals has written a very good piece about sort of likening Trump to an abusive partner in a relationship. And that we as a culture really are reacting like the battered wife or whatever, the battered spouse, that, you're in a relationship with someone like that, they'll get in a rage and they'll send you 70 texts a day, and the spouse is trying to concentrate on their life and their work, but you spend so much of your time and so much of your energy just beating back and fending off the onslaught that's coming from this person who has a sort of twisted psychology, that you become consumed.
The Twitter.
Your identity becomes a response to them instead of, your own identity in a way. And I think, one day this will pass. We will get through this, and Trump will be gone, and Trumpism will stay for a while, unfortunately. Yeah. But eventually that too will pass. But I'm just hoping that I'm looking forward to the day that we can return to some kind of normalcy that I didn't realize. I think none of us realized how lucky we were that our politics, in a sense, was so uninteresting that we could choose to tune it out every day. It was being competently run. You could argue about who was right and wrong. There are two or more different sides in every different thing, but everybody, the dominant thrust of American government was really trying to do well, trying to do good by people, trying to be fair, and trying to raise everybody up. And there's such chaos and corruption and confusion, and it's such a friggin' train wreck. that it consumes all of us. It's
Yeah.
so many people are spending way too much of their time and energy thinking about, worrying about what is going on with government. Um, I think when this is over, I mean, I think we all need to look forward to a day when our politics can be a little less exciting.
Yeah.
Uh, what's interesting to people, what stories telling is about, what news is about. That's why print media is flourishing at the moment. News is about conflict, stories. Stories compel us. We want to watch stories. We consume movies, TV shows, read things in the newspaper. Stories are tales of conflict,
Mhm.
and there's a lot of it right now. And so we're all consumed by it, and it's burning a lot of our energy and attention. It really could be going to much more worthy things, but at the moment, I think this is the big fight. This is the fight to have. It's the fight for our souls.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that it's genuinely dangerous what's afoot, and we all kind of have to put down our weapons, at least in terms of our fighting with each other and judging each other, and try to get our head around the psychology of this moment, what Trump's psychology is and how that works on all of us, and what the greater psychology in the country and the world is at the moment that is letting this authoritarian streak rise around the globe.
Right. And I think, like you said, it's just for me, I've had to make a lot of hard decisions, but opposing this, whatever this guy is the easiest thing I've ever done, creating this podcast. Like, it all comes back to that moment, like Meryl Streep said, he made fun of a disabled guy. What what country is this? I was that not the worst thing you could do if you were a kid when you were a kid?
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
bottom
yeah.
of the barrel.
He and mocks victims of sexual
Right.
assault, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible. But the bigger concern is like, right now we're kind of limping along and consumed in our own, partisan Trump, bickering.
Mhm.
But real history is happening, and real events are always what kind of moves national politics. And the real danger at the moment is that we're one real crisis away from something catastrophic.
Mhm.
Think about for a moment if 9/11 happened today, or a 9/11 style attack.
Yep.
The competency of the United States government is at a 100-year low, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Certainly post World War II
Mhm.
low. Competent professionals in the State Department, and now starting to be in defense, but the national security apparatus are resigning. Um, that I mean by the thousands in the State Department, most particularly. Um, and faith in government is at a historic low. Congress, things like that. If something were to happen right now, the state the country is in,
Yeah.
and without a steady hand at the lead, I mean, I think Trump is capable of anything.
Absolutely.
I mean, what could he do? I don't know. Foreign wars, martial law in America. I don't know. Suspend elections.
Right.
None of it would come out of the blue. There would be an argument. There would be a discussion. But um, what his instincts are and what he cares about, yeah, I think things could get bad fast. And before there would be any real time for any of these governmental processes, like to put a check on him, they would all move too slowly for something like that.
Yeah. There's no retroactive action for a nuclear bomb. It's over when it's over.
That's right. All kinds of invasions, all kinds of suspensions of human rights, civil rights. Um, yeah, I think it's genuinely a perilous moment. I mean, look, I don't. There's something funny about Trump. People have a lot of laughs at his expense. I think that's good and healthy. I think the film will do that as well. But ultimately, this isn't going to be a sort of stuffy and analytical psychiatric parsing of his persona. I think needs to be a very relatable and probably a stealth player. And then I think it'll be something that it's fun to have some laughs at his expense for a little while.
Sure.
But at a certain point, you start stacking up the arguments, it stops being so fun. And it starts to be really important. And, I think that the left, there's a lot of activism. Some of it's effective, some of it isn't. But this argument has to break out of just, I think it's being pushed aside by a lot of the people in the middle as one side versus the other. They say this, they say that. Well, not everything is like that. I mean, that's a sort of false equivalency argument. And you have a lot of legitimacy arguing one thing and a lot of uninformed non-experts arguing the opposite side.
Right.
So yeah, one side says one thing, one side says the other, but the sides aren't equal.
No. We could do a whole probably 10-hour show on the both sides thing.
Call me back, do the one on false equivalency. But look, we need to catch fire. We need to catch some momentum on the Kickstarter campaign because, for the film to really penetrate, I mean, the film has to be done. It has to be top notch. I mean, you said this has been the easiest cause to throw yourself behind. I feel the same way. I mean, everybody's trying to do what they can do. I'm a filmmaker. I'm a documentary filmmaker. This is what I can do. And it's my privilege and pleasure to join in whatever way I can. But films take money, and if you want them to get out there and you want them to really penetrate and reach a wider audience, they need a good chunk of money because it's tough to cut through in mass media. So we put a $50,000 Kickstarter campaign together. We'll definitely hit that mark, but we need every penny. But the real question is, can we catch fire and raise a real budget that would make a film that would be as broadly seen and known as Inconvenient Truth and really end up in theaters around the country and on TV. And people said, like, oh, aren't you afraid you're gonna get audited? You're gonna get audited for the rest of your life, or as long as the Trump administration is it. It's like, well, yeah, I probably am, and I'm cool with it because you got to do what you got to do. But that's how crazy it's become. Everybody understands that nobody would have said any of the previous presidents, maybe Nixon. Right, that if you spoke out against him as a private citizen, that you should be prepared for some kind of retribution. But that's where it's at.
Yeah.
That's what everybody assumes from this guy, that of course he's capable of that. Whether he has the attention span to do that or the competency to do that is another question. He's certainly capable of it.
My whole thing with him is like fuck this guy. Like, audit, whatever. Like, there's no price on your country. Like, this country has given us everything. We have what we have because of this country. We're not going to let this guy end what our founders built. No, hell no. I'll take an audit over that.
Yeah,
whatever.
For sure. You got to put your money where your mouth is. I mean, of course, everybody's got to stand up and just kind of make the case. We got more people talking truth is what we need, because the truth has become hard to come by for some reason.
So how do to the Kickstarter, how do people go to that, or what's the address? And
go to Kickstarter. Just go to Kickstarter and search for #Unfit. We've been trending at the top on the documentaries almost since we launched, and also if on films in Kickstarter, we tend to trend towards the top. But search #Unfit on the Kickstarter platform. We are tax deductible. That's an important bit. So there's a great irony that I hope people will enjoy about this being tax shelter. To speak out and help get a film made that says the truth about the 45th president.
That is ironic. You're right. Tax deductible. About a guy who wasn't quite able to pay his tax.
That's the country we live in. Supports this kind of discourse.
Yeah, man, we're going to put this up on our Facebook page, which has huge traffic. I don't know why, more than the other ones. So we'll put it up, and
please do.
It's
They do. You can get a tote bag. I'm just joking about the tote bag. We're not making tote bags, but you can get a digital download. There's a lot of other great rewards to check out. Name in the credits, but contribute. Be part of it. There's people who feel the same way. Just if you give a buck, whatever. Give a buck. Give $5, $15. Tell a friend. Let's get some momentum behind this and turn #Unfit into a cause.
Yeah, in the same way that like you said, everyone knows what's going on. So active measures was about something that we know is happening, but they packaged in an accessible means. And you guys are taking a different story about Trump and making it so it hits hard.
That's right. I mean, look, ultimately, our psychology is everything. It's what drives us. We have to understand what's driving us, what's motivating us, and what's motivating people who think differently than us as well.
Anything else you want to tell Mueller Time or just anyone in general?
I'm grateful to Mueller Time. I've been listening to it. I think it's great and worthy podcast. Lord knows how long the investigation will go. We just hope that it gets to the truth, because obviously there's a lot of very serious issues at the core of it. I think, one of the things that's crazy, and this goes back to this sort of idea of malignant normality. I think that Lord knows what will be uncovered. What's already come out is so shocking.
Yeah.
I think that the danger is that because of the dribs and drabs, this malignant normality, we have begun to understand as normal something that is really very dangerous. I think we've heard the quid, the pro, and the quo. We know what happened, and it's not shocking because of the little ways in which it's been normalized along the way. But hopefully, just sharing the full proceeds of the investigation will help fill in the blanks for some people who still don't see.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, thanks for talking to us. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Have me back anytime, Eric. I appreciate it. Good to be
with you. All right, cool.
Okay.
Talk to you later, brother.
Take care, man.